Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Netflix's Trese. So, immediately once I heard that this was another supernatural anime show, I was like, okay, I have to get into this. I have to watch it. And I had watched the first two episodes. I really was won over by the very first episode, but I realized that, the episodes are only 30 minutes per, so I was like, well, it seems like the second episode is even a little bit shorter than that, so I just kind of combined the first two episodes of this show. So immediately, for people who are interested in this whole thing, immediately when I heard the word supernatural, I was like, click, let's watch. Really, for me, I thought that this show immediately does kind of feel very much like a Constantine kind of vibe. If people have never seen, especially the Constantine show, that I believe is still on the CW or the CW Seed, but if anything, this feels very much like the Constantine City of Demons anime movie. If you guys have not been able to see any of that, and you want to see something that feels very familiar to this, maybe you pretty much watch this whole entire season in one sitting. Go ahead and go into an app called letter C Movies, and you should be able to see either the Constantine show, or you should be able to see Constantine City of Demons absolutely free. There's no fees there. So, since I've mentioned this, Treese is it kind of feels very Constantine-ish for people that shows where there is like an investigation about the supernatural. Really, this comes to be very much like a detective show. Like, it has a lot of those kinds of styles, but really it goes into a lot of rituals, chanting, or like uh, trying to summon demons to be able to get answers. And also, we have a lot of action going on in these two episodes. Man, even when there feels to be like an episode that kind of just has a goofy concept, eventually there is still action in the episode. Really, I do really enjoy this show. Like, we have some kind of characters that I'm not quite understanding exactly what they are, but I at least am familiar what their names are. I'm kind of getting kind of familiar with who these people are through these two episodes. Uh, we have Treese, who is kind of attached at the hip with two other men. It seems that these two other men are called the Cabal, uh, Crispin and Basillo, and it seems that both of these characters are to change their from normal faces to these almost like theater-esque like masks, and to seemingly be these almost unstoppable characters that are to help out Trees from time to time. We also are to showcase in the very beginning of this episode, and plus to what follows, we're consistently seeing Treese and her family. At some points, we have uh, Treese, especially in this pilot episode, with her mother. But eventually, we have Treese, who, as a younger Treese, is to eventually help out some cases with her father. So we really have this kind of being like a handing over the handing over the ropes kind of deal, where eventually we have a lot of people who are to also talk about Treese, but to also talk about her parents and how they feel like her parents would be proud of her of all that she has done. Really, this episode has a lot of very interesting visuals. It kind of uh, comes and gives like a lot at you at one point in time in one episode, but eventually, especially after the second episode, I'm like, oh, okay, so I can kind of understand the rhythm of the rhyme in some of these episodes. We start like seeing some like goddesses of death in this episode, and we are to also within these two episodes see this great stallion, like horseman character that seems to be sitting on some throne, having Trese kind of mentioned to him that one of his tribesmen have taken a human for a trophy. So, going into these episodes, what we are to obtain in this early episodes, the very first episode, we are to see some things going on with Trese and her mother, to see how something is summoned. And then eventually we are to see a ghost um, who had been um, who had been killed in a ritual like fashion, and people are kind of baffled and confused of why a ghost would be killed. Like, what was the purpose of that? And eventually we are to see within this episode where this is to eventually head. And eventually that is to lead to a plethora of demons that I'm trying to come up with the name of. Let me pause here. Let me I think it's Aswang. Yeah, Aswang. I hope I'm saying that right because I'm probably saying it incorrectly. Yeah, Aswang. We have demons who are coming up like in the very early part of this episode to go and tear apart people that are in a subway, and eventually that is to lead to like see that these characters consistently go off and just tear through people, and eventually the second episode is to deal with a one of great stallions that has been out of the stable and is going on to try and race for trophies. But eventually we find out also that there is people that are getting electrified consistently, and we are to find out that somebody is the culprit of all this. And so that's what happens within these first two episodes. Really, just visually interesting episodes, plus just visually interesting show so far. Like, I'm very interested in going and watching more, just so I can see how these visuals tend to play out. Like, I want to see eventually if I can figure out everything that is kind of going on, so I can try to review these things. Because especially in this first episode, there's a lot to digest. Like, there's flame head like demons going and talking to Trese. There's goddesses of death talking to Trese. All kinds of things. All heck is breaking loose in this pilot episode. So I think it's about that time to go into spoiler time about it. So it is about time to say it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode, or these first two episodes, because I'm covering both. So in the very beginning of this pilot episode, we are to see both Trese and her mother, who is Miranda, going and doing a ritual sacrificing a bird. And so we are to see the ghost of the bird just kind of fly off and as a ghost. And so we are to have Miranda show Trese this. Alexandra Trese. We are to have Miranda show Trese this to show how she needs to be able to learn how to sacrifice things. And so we have Trese, who is asking her mother if she is to go and summon a fire god, who is Centelmo. Centalmo. And we will see him actually later in the episode. And so Centalmo eventually doesn't actually appear here, but We have Miranda, who is to eventually call her husband, who is Anton, and eventually see that everything is going right with Anton. And so we have Miranda, who is to eventually have her phone go dead while she's talking to her husband. We have Miranda, who is to tell Trese to go and hide until Miranda is to come back for her, and so Trese does so. Uh, I'm gonna try to do all this flashback stuff all in one motion, so if this is not all connected together, I'm connecting it all together because that is the purpose of this whole thing, to do the flashbacks before current time. And so if people don't like it that way, that's perfectly okay. So we have Miranda, who is telling Trese to go and hide, so Trese goes and hides in the cave. We have Anton, who goes and retrieves uh, Trese afterwards to eventually have all these Aswang who had died. Numerous Aswang had been killed, and I guess so had Miranda. To where we have Aswang and his two men that is following him, that they are to turn into werewolves in the second episode. And so, but they have like very much like the powers of the Cabal, where it seems like they have like kind of a healing factor and whatever. So pushing on. So we in this episode have Trese, who is to eventually go to a case on a subway, and there is a plethora of blood sprayed everywhere onto this subway because in the very beginning of this episode we are to see a bunch of people that all of a sudden this subway just stops. They are to get out and they are thinking like, well, hey, where do we head next? All of a sudden we are starting to see a number of Aswang start to climb up over this bridge to get to all of these people and kill them all off. So we have Trese, who is to go to Captain Guerrero and try to solve this case. So we have Trese, who is to go and to summon Centelmo, and Centelmo is to go and tell her that there are some spirits that remain from this subway, and so we have Trese, who is to eventually go and summon Immersory, Immersi, and so this is the goddess of death. And so we have Trese, who is talking to the goddess of death and like trying to see what had all happened here. So we go on to have Trese, who is to track down a spot of Aswang and to talk to their chief. We are to find out that this chief is, I guess, going and picking out an animal part to eat. But we have Trese, who is going into this chief's place to talk about how some of his Aswang have gone in to kill numerous people on this subway. So we have Trese, who is interrogating this guy for information, and he will not give anything up. So we have Trese, who's like, well, I'm going to get this information one way or the other of who brokered this deal. So we have Trese, who is to poke out the eye of this guy, and so we have Trese going into the car with the Cabal And we have her go and ask one of the two guys that she is with to give her some water and a glass. So they do so. We have Trese who takes her little dagger and stirs the dagger with the eye and the water, and she is to eventually find in this rag that she's to dump the water into that it seems that the mayor is making a deal with the Aswang. And so here is also the thing that Trese had done when after she had gone and talked to all of these demons into the subway. So we have Trese who is to go to a like a troll-like character or a goblin-like character named Nuno. Evidently, Nuno has a goblin with him that kind of follows him everywhere, like a golem, like a very like dirt-like character, and like a dirt slash rock-like character. So we have Trese who calls out for Nuno, and this golem appears, and Nuno pops consistently out of this sewer to give Trese information in exchange for usually a candy bar, usually for like a crunch bar or something, or a nut bar. So we have Trese who is to talk to Nuno, and we eventually have Nuno that is to tell Trese that evidently there was some ghost named Gina Santos, and she was boasting about how she was eventually going to be queen of like I guess like a treaty between the humans and her. We're going to make her a queen of the underworld. Sadly, with mermaid bones or crushed mermaid bones, we ended up finding out that someone had taken Gina Santos and trapped her into this ritual and killed her instead. So, like, Gina was thinking that if she was to summon someone, that she was going to be able to be queen, but instead she was to be killed to make a sacrifice for the Aswang, and or she was to be killed as a sacrifice, because we have eventually that we are to find Trese is to go off and eventually find where the Aswang are to be having a nest. Trese is to go and find that there is this location where Aswang are torturing people, keeping them in locked cages, and so we have Trese who is to head on and eventually find there is a bunch of Aswang that are to go and want to kill Trese, because really, since Trese had killed two of theirs, the Aswang wants to kill Trese. And we have the Kamal who arrive via rooftop to help Trese out. So, like, the numbers game is pretty even. The Cabal, both the guys mentioned that they wanted to not let Trese have all the fun, and they freed all the hostages. So we have the Trese and the Cabal taking all of these guys out. going and killing every bit of them. And so afterwards, we are to find out that the people, the hostages, all mentioned that the mayor, because they were witness to this, had been making a deal with the Aswang and the sacrifice of Gina Santos was like key to that. And so, like, interesting enough, like Nuno had mentioned that Gina thought that she was going to be a player in all of this, but instead she was actually just the chips in very like casino-like terms. So we have really just uh, Captain Guevara going like, oh, okay, I guess like with all of these eyewitnesses seeing the mayor as part of this whole thing, like then we're going to be able to book him for the murder of Gina Santos and a number of other things. So with that said, that kind of takes care of a bulk of the first episode. We have Trese, who is to eventually also see uh, the goddess of death yet again, to eventually have the goddess of death make amends and give Trese something for a part of her arsenal that I guess she'll use at some point later. So really, I think that did cover a bulk of the first episode. Uh, like, if anything, I don't want to cover the Trese and the Hank stuff, because that was just kind of like Trese, like, goes into a room that I guess is, like, also attached to a bar, and, like, both Hank and Trese have this, like, common talk, but it's, like, there's no biggie there. So, pushing on to the next episode, like, I love how really in like this episode there's like a lot of mystery in these episodes. So like I kind of thought that these were kind of interesting. So uh we have in a flashback a woman who busts into this bar to go and take out a bunch of guys. And so we end up finding one man who is desperately just begging like, "Oh, please don't kill me." Hoo hoo hoo. And so really we have this woman who is killing all these men, and she is just killing this guy just because it's like, well, she doesn't want any witnesses. And cuz really we have uh we have when we have Anton Trese, and we have Trese come in helping out Captain uh, Guillermo. We have Anton uh, and his two, let's just say, werewolves for the sake of werewolves. They come to the consensus that it seems that this woman was not after the guy that these two bodyguards were protecting. This woman was after these bodyguards because they had a military tattoo that evidently had her want to go after them to kill all of them off. So we have Trese, who is to take the eye of one of these people and to showcase that this is the woman that off of a paper towel or whichever, off of a towel, that this is the thing that these people are going to be looking for. This woman is going to be the culprit of all this. So we are to have later that eventually Anton and Trese are going to this military soldier to let him know that that someone is coming after him because all the other ones of soldiers that were a part of his command are all dead, and someone is coming for him. This soldier, is completely fine with anyone coming for him, and eventually it just leads to both Anton and Trese not having the ability to be able to help this guy, and so they leave. They're like, well, if he's going to die, he's going to die. There's nothing we can do. So, pushing on. So, we have Trese, who is to go and be tied to another one of Captain Gutierrez's cases again, because there's something odd about it. So we have Trese, who is to go and find a car that has some bizarre footprints on the top of it. And they end up kind of figuring out that it is some kind of horse prints. And I'm like, okay, that seems a little weird. So eventually we are to find out that this car was involved in some race, and it seems that someone was bitter about the bitter after the fact that they had even won, because eventually we are to, I guess, have this this person who was to collect this trophy afterwards, and evidently it was not something to easily get. So we now have a horse-like demon person who is to collect a trophy of a human being, and so now Trese is on the case because she has to be able to get this human from back of this this demon, this horse-like demon thing, and to be able to like, because demons can't just keep humans as trophies. It's not a thing. You can't do it. It's kind of it's against the treaty rules. So we have eventually Trese going out of her way to eventually find the Great Stallion, who she evidently has to make like some kind of appointment with, and the assistant is to pick up the phone and be like, "Oh, the Great Stallion will see you now." So, but Trese is to only see him alone. So we have Trese going to see the Great Stallion, and so she is to let him know that one of his tribe members have taken a woman for their trophy, and so yeah, that is a big no-no. And so Trese is asking this Great Stallion if anybody has gone missing lately, and so we end up having this Great Stallion mentioning, it's like, well, like, hey, I really appreciate like you coming to me with this, and if anything, I can probably deal with this myself. And Trese is like, well, that's great and all, but there's like a human missing out of all this, so I want to get to this case before you do, kind of thing. So we have the Great Stallion who is to tell Trese, well, if anything, like I like the way that you're approaching this. If anything, like, your father would have been proud of the daughter that you've become. But like, I wish that I can say the same thing about my child. Like, my son has gone missing for a few days, so maybe this is the person that you're looking for. Because eventually we have the Cabal, who are kind of going and kind of scouting some witnesses when Trese is to see this car, and Trese is to have the Cabal bring over two women that I guess are like are ghosts, and so I guess on their off time they're just ghosts. Bizarrely, they look like ghosts to me. It could be something else. So we have these two ghosts who tells these people that actually uh, this great stallion's son like has horsepower in more ways than one, if you know what I mean. And so that's where we are to track to go to the great stallion and to eventually know that his son has gone missing. So we eventually have Trese, who is to eventually track down the Great Stallion's son, and he is continuously doing another race. So eventually, just go to any race, and you'll find this guy there. So we have Trese, who is to decide to race against this guy who is to be in his car. But eventually, once this race is to go off, eventually this guy transforms both himself and his car into a uh, into a horse and starts beating Trese fairly easily, to where Trese goes and takes these both ghost women and uh, has them on both sides of her car, and so she is able to even get way faster than the Great Stallion's son and beats him. And so Trese is to get the trophy from the Great Stallion's son and be able to retrieve this woman. And so we have Trese, who is to ask the woman, like, hey, like, what had happened to her. And she had just mentioned, it's like, well, yeah, I didn't quite understand what gone on. Like, it seemed like after uh, my boyfriend had lost this race, it just seemed that all of a sudden like I was just like vanished, as if like a spell had been casted upon her. And so we also have another bizarro case going on where we are to start seeing that the Captain Gutierrez, is to take Trese because it seems that there had been a case of numerous people getting electrified in one location, seemingly in a very short amount of months. And so we have Trese, who's like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to kind of figure this out. So we have Trese again, who goes to Nuno, and it seems that Nuno mentions that it seems that there is some buzzing going around, and that it seems that people are starting to pray to something that is not quite heaven, but like it seems that people are starting to pray to somebody, and some people are starting to collect. So we eventually have uh, Trese, who is going and putting a spell on this corpse, and she's to see a lightning bolt logo in the back of this guy's neck to trigger that there is some family like crest that Trese realizes on the back of this neck. And so we have Trese ask if the coroner had caught that symbol before, and Captain Guevara is like, I don't think so. So Trese is like, oh, okay, well, if anything, like, I'll go and take care of this because I love complaining to the power company. So we have Trese, who is to go to this man called Baglon Lectro. And so we have, of course, Trese accusing this man of going and claiming some people and killing them all off for the name of his family. And we, of course, have this guy who's denying all this, that that reasonably he or anyone in his family would not be have been doing any of that. And so we eventually have Trese, who is to leave this guy's electric company-like place, to eventually go and find out that actually it is not Electro who is doing this. It is actually his son. Like, I don't know what it is. It seems like everybody, instead of their actual like fathers, it's like you have the son of the person who is actually doing all of this ruckus. So we are to push on, and so somewhere in this episode, we are to eventually have Baglon Kalim, uh, Electro's son. We are to have him pop up and start to take down the Kamals and start to attack Trese. Trese is to use this magic shield to block this guy's attack, Baglong's attack, and so we eventually have Nuno's golem that just appears out of nowhere and is starting to help Trese. And so Nuno pops his head from out of the sewer to just like, hey, I'm sorry that I'm late. Like, if anything, like, like, how about I help you out with what's going on here? So we have this golem that is, of course, attacking and seemingly taking care of this guy, but we have Trese, who is to throw her dagger into this golem to where the dagger hits to the very like front of this guy's chest. So we have Trese, who's telling the golem to drown him, which is basically mean to kill him off. So this golem figures out how to take this guy out and kill him off, and so we have Trese thanking Nuno, but I'm sure eventually there's going to be some future candy bars in his future to thank him. And so we eventually find that Trese and her men have no car to drive now, and so like they're trying to collect some money to go for the bus fare. So you would think that they would have just called an Uber. Or a taxi, whichever. Anyways, so more than likely it would have been ridiculously expensive, but still. Anyways, so they could have like drove into like a rent-a-car spot if there is one, or whichever, or really just could have called a friend if they had one. So we eventually have this case seemingly resolved. It seems that we have Trese, who is to eventually wake up the following day to have the Kamals who had slept with the two ghost women, because evidently these women were, or technically the Kamals were these women's trophies for helping her out win this case. And so we all of a sudden have Baglong Electro go and break through this girl's ceiling to tell her how could she have killed his son. And Trese is like, well, hey, like, if anything, like, he forced my hand, he killed numerous people, and he did it wrongly, so I had to take him out. And so we have Electro that is threatening Trese with like, well, if anything, there's a storm of brewing soon, and I'm not going to be there to help you out. So, if anything, just count your blessings, because like something is coming. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting to see this episode, but I also want to try to get this done as quickly as possible. I really liked these episodes. Like, really, like, it's just kind of cool to see eventually all these things kind of, like, come out and plop out. Like, it kind of has that reminding style of, like, a real Ghostbusters kind of episode, or just Ghostbusters in general. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. But mainly it feels like Constantine. Like, it has that Constantine / Ghostbuster-like feel. So, I don't know, like, it kind of felt good. If Bustin' makes you feel good. So, with that said, I am going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.